This is going to be the end of the year book tag, and before I jump into it, I am going to just address what I'm wearing. Yes, you're right, your eyes are not deceiving you. This is indeed a red velvet hoodie. I bought it from H&M last year, and it's a little bit Christmassy without being a Christmas jumper. So I thought it was appropriate for an end of the year book tag. So without any further ado, I am going to jump right in. Just quickly, I have my notes here, so if I'm looking down, that's why. So question number 1, any books you've started this year that you need to finish? And yes, I do have some, and this is the very first year where I've been reading multiple books at the same time, but there are a few that I have started that I haven't finished for various reasons. The first one is Requiem for the Sun by Elizabeth Haydn, which is book 4 in the Symphony of Ages series. You can tell that I'm currently reading this one because there's no dust jacket on it. I always take dust jackets off when I'm reading hardback books. I started this probably around the middle of the year, I can't quite remember. It was just before I started getting into Brandon Sanderson's books, and essentially I started reading this. It's a reread for me, and I just got completely distracted by reading Sanderson's books and then with my ever-growing TBR. So I'm on page 58 of this book, and like I said, it is a reread, so it's not necessarily urgent that I finish this one this year, but there's something about starting a book, I kind of want to finish it this year, so I'm hoping to get to that one. The next book I want to talk about, I don't have a physical copy of because I'm reading it on audio, and that is Red Rising. I'll put a picture of it here. Red Rising is a sci-fi book, and I don't read a lot of sci-fi. I do like sci-fi, it's just that I don't read a lot of it. I actually watch more sci-fi than I read. But I started this book and I am interested in it, but I feel like perhaps the audiobook experience isn't the best one for me in that particular genre, because I am struggling to follow it a little bit on audio, and I've swapped to a different audio. I think my relationship with audiobooks is a little bit weird in that I find it a lot easier to reread books on audio rather than to listen to new books on audio. I don't know if that's just me. If you get that as well, then let me know. I do want to finish it though, because the premise really intrigues me. It's essentially set in this... I didn't give you a synopsis for this one. It's, like I said, it's a 4th book in an epic fantasy series, so it's really, really difficult for me to tell you what this is about. But this, The Symphony of Ages by Elizabeth Haydn, like I said, it's an epic fantasy series where there's the female protagonist, Rhapsody, is swept up in this adventure, which is like a travelling adventure, and she ends up in a place that she isn't familiar with, and she has lots of things to deal with personally and politically, and there's an antagonist that needs to be defeated. It's got all the hallmarks of a standard epic fantasy, but like all epic fantasies, it's really difficult to tell you what it's about without spoilers because there's just so much going on, which is why I didn't touch on that too much. But Red Rising is the first book in a sci-fi fantasy series where, from what I can make out, and I'm not incredibly far into it so far, but it's set on Mars, and there's these 2 groups of people. So there's the Reds and the Golds, and the Reds are like the working class, but they're not treated particularly well, and they are working to prepare Mars ready for human habitation, and that's been going on for generations. So it's their blood, sweat and tears that are going into this world that humans will one day habitate, but they aren't reaping any of the benefits themselves. And then there's the Gold, which is the upper class, and I haven't come into much contact with them in my read of it yet, so I can't go too far into it, but they essentially are the ones oppressing the Reds. And my understanding is that the story is going to be about our main character who wants to lead the Reds to overthrow the goals. I'm not sure, I'll check back in with you once I've actually read it, which will be by the end of the year. The next isn't really a book, it's a series. It's the Three Dark Crowns series by Kendall Blake. I literally just finished this first book this morning when I'm filming this. So this series follows 3 princesses, they're triplets, and they were separated when they were very young because in the island of Fenban, where they live, one queen is crowned from the 3 princesses, and the way that princess is chosen to be crowned as queen is because she successfully has to kill her 2 sisters. So they're separated young so they can learn their particular types of magic and ready themselves to murder their sisters, which gives me serious Hunger Games vibes. The premise sounds super interesting to me. This one was a little bit of a slow burn, which I did know about in advance, so that was fine for me, but if you're going to pick this up, go into it knowing it's a slow burn and the murdering doesn't start in this book. This is kind of all the build up and the lead up and the world setting and the character building so that you understand what's going on and why it's going on and who is what. It's quite a big cast of characters, and I tend to read a lot of books with lots and lots of characters in them, but I did find myself getting a little bit confused in this one, not because it's vastly more characters than I'm used to reading, but just because of the way it was written, I think. So yeah, I finished this one. It's got a pretty explosive ending. Basically, there weren't any shock moments in this book, apart from like the last 2 pages. Where my mind was like, oh wow, now I need the next one. So I would like to finish this series, or all the books that are out in this series, by the end of the year. And they're not especially long, so hopefully that is doable. And I do actually have the other 3 that are out on their way to me, which is 1 Dark Throne, 2 Dark Reigns, and the Queens of Fenban. The Queens of Fenban being a bind up of the novellas. So that's that one. And finally, for books I want to finish this year, is The Northern Lights. Now this is book 1 of his Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. It's a reread for me, so realistically I only want to get through to finish this book this year. If I manage that along with all of the others I want to finish this year, then I'll be happy. But like I said, it's a reread for me. I've got the physical copy, but I am listening to it on audio, which I'm really enjoying because it's a full cast audiobook. Also, the narrative elements of it are narrated by Philip Pullman himself, which is really interesting to hear him telling his own story. So I'd like to finish at least this book in the trilogy. If I can finish the whole trilogy, then all the better, but realistically that's not going to happen. I've only got 6 weeks left of the year, so that's scary. So that was question 1. Oh dear, I've already been filming for like 10 minutes. Might have to cut some stuff out there. Number 2, do you have do you have an autumnal book to transition to the end of the year? And the simple answer to this is no. I'm not a seasonal reader. I really don't choose my books that way. I just look at my TBR and decide which particular book on that list I want to read next. So the book that I am going to read next is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, it's just come out, it's Brandon Sanderson. I love Brandon Sanderson's writing, so I wanted to get to it. Also, it will be my first young adult by him, and it will be my first sci-fi by him. So lots of firsts there. Also, Elliot Brooks is running a read-along for this book over on her channel this month, so I want to get to this, and I am planning to start it after I'm done filming, so yay! Number 3, is there a new release you're still waiting for? So I have a couple of things to discuss here. First of all, at the time I'm filming this, and I don't know when this video is going up, but at the time I'm filming this, yesterday, which was Saturday, today's Sunday, Fairy Loot announced their theme for the December box, which is dragons. I mean, sold. I subscribed instantly. I did a single purchase for the November box, which I will be unboxing on this channel, which is my first ever book subscription box, and I'm super excited for that one. But then when they announced that dragons was the theme for December, I was like, yeah, you had me. Like, you had me at November, but now that it's dragons, yes, please. So I've subscribed, and I'm super looking forward to the books that are going to be in that box, because there's one new release book that's going to be in it that's a December release, and there's also going to be an advanced reader copy of a book that isn't due to be released until June next year. So that's super exciting. I obviously don't know what the books are yet. I will unbox that on this channel as well, but that's not going to be until really near the end of the year, or potentially even early next year, which is crazy to say, but I'm super looking forward to that. And also a book that has actually already come out but that I haven't got a copy of yet, which is The Girls of Paper and Fire, which I've heard a lot about. It's an Asian inspired fantasy with LGBTQ representation. I believe the main character is a lesbian, but don't quote me on that because I haven't read it yet. And it centres around this premise of these women who are concubines to a male leader. I don't know if it's a king, I think so. Doesn't matter. The point is, they are sexually enslaved against their wishes, and it follows them and their story, but in a fantastical world. So I'm really looking forward to reading that book, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to get to it before the end of the year, but if I can't, it won't be long before I do. So moving on to question 4, 3 books you want to read before the end of the year. And this is pretty similar to what I've said so far. So I do want to finish the 3 Dark Crowns series, as I already mentioned. I do want to read Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Another book that I haven't mentioned yet is Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. Elliot Brooks has been talking about this book on her channel, and it just sounds really interesting to me, and I've been wanting to get more into manga. I'm trying really hard to pick up some manga because I find that it's a really good way to get some reading done when you don't have a lot of time. So I was interested in picking this one up. The premise is that these 2 brothers have lost their mother, and they are trying to find a way to bring her back, and when they do try, it goes horribly wrong, and one ends up with his soul in a body of metal armour, and the other loses like a leg and an arm, or 2 legs and an arm, or an arm and 2 legs, I don't know. So he loses some of his limbs. Haven't read it yet, clearly. But I hear that it's really enjoyable. I've looked at the art inside, and it's very simple, which I like. Not too busy, which should make it a little bit easier to read, hopefully. I'm just really looking forward to picking this one up. Question 5. Is there a book that you think could still shock you and become your favourite? So like I mentioned before, the 3 Dark Crowns series, the premise sounds super interesting to me. Book 1 was a little bit slow, but like I said, it didn't bother me too much because I did know that going into it. But I feel like that book on its own wouldn't make it into anywhere near any of the favourites list for me. But if the theme from the end of that book carries on into the other books, then I can definitely see that becoming one of my favourite series. The other is Red Rising, because again, the premise sounds really interesting to me, and I don't read a lot of sci-fi like I mentioned before, but I feel like if I can get into it, that one really has the potential to grab me, because it's not entirely outside of the realms of possibility that that could happen at some point in humankind's future. I mean, this planet isn't an inexhaustible resource, and so I find the whole concept of the Red Riding series pretty interesting, and I'm hoping that I could get myself into it, because I think if I manage to, it has the potential to be a favourite. And number 6, finally, is have you made any reading plans for 2019? And again, the simple answer to this is no, because I don't really plan my reading particularly. I probably most of the time know what my next book is going to be, or what my next 2 books are going to be, but beyond that I really don't plan things that way. I like to pick up whatever book speaks to me in that particular moment. So I have a very, very, very long list of books that I want to read, and when I'm about 50 to 75% through a book, I like to start thinking about what I'd like to read next from my TBR, just so I've got time to get hold of it if I don't already have it. But yeah, I really don't plan my reading beyond that. So no reading plans for 2019. And that's it for this tag video. If you want to give this tag a go, then please do, and please let me know in the comments if you've done it so I can check out your video as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see any more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button. I'd super appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks, bye.